I would want you to go through few pages. Okay. Page number 157 बच्चों. Behavioralism in geography, evolution or revolution? Through the 1960s, it had been generally asserted that geography was experiencing a second revolution, the behavioral revolution, which was expected to bring about a major transformation. However, any expectations of revolution were at the best premature, because instead what has taken place has been a gradual emergence and consolidation, very important term, double underline, consolidation of a set of approaches which had already existed. We were only consolidating them, that aim to increase the scope of geographical explanation by seeking a fuller understanding of the processes that underpin the real world behavior, but we are still trying to explain it with the help of the laws. Their development certainly represents a significant milestone in geographical thought, but hardly anything that constitutes of the revolutions. Okay. In a fundamental sense, behavioral approach in human geography is a point of view rather than a rigorous paradigm. So it did not bring away any revolution away from the spatial science paradigm of the QR phase, but it became an attachment to it. So hence it did not represent any radical break from the past. It was business as usual. Okay. So I hope that this first dimension is clear to you. Okay. So hence it was more of an attachment to the quantitative revolution paradigm, and as such we cannot call behavioralism as a separate revolution. Hardly any stuff of which revolutions are made. Whereas when we talk about radicalism now, we are saying that this is a separate paradigm. Why is it so? Why we are saying so? Let's try to understand that. Now the earlier focus and focus in radicalism. Earlier focus is more on spatial analysis. Lawmaking. Identification of supermarkets. Settlements, etc. Whereas in radicalism we are asking, is geography only about locating the location of different places? Is geography only concerned with the location of supermarkets? Is geography only concerned about the location of industries and so on? Is geography about something more? Should geography try to address the current day problems that the humanity faces? Here we started talking about the resolution of challenges that humanity is facing. Inequalities and disparities. So it was more about the resolution of these particular problems that the humanity is facing. Now geography is no more about only location of the supermarkets. It should not be only concerned with where is the location of industries. We must try to resolve the problems that the humankind is facing. Inequalities, disparities, illiteracy, etc. What geographers are doing about that? Hence, the role of geographers should now change. Geographers should not be concerned only with map making, only with the analysis of that location. No, geographers should change their role. Hence, this is the aspect which is associated with the role of geographers, which is being transitioned now in the geographical studies. Now, to understand this, let me give you a brief story. How do we talk about the problems and how do we find the solutions? So, you must have heard about Franz Kafka. If not, you can go and search today itself. So, Franz Kafka once was sitting in a park, and Franz Kafka was witnessing a girl who was deliberately searching for something. Then that girl, after some time, she came to Franz Kafka and she asked Franz Kafka, "Have you seen my doll? I have lost my doll. I was playing with my doll and I don't know where she is right now." And in the playground, they both started searching for her doll. But in that area, they could not find the doll that the little girl had already lost. But then Franz Kafka told her, "I will again search for your doll. You come and visit me tomorrow, okay? And if I will find your doll, then I will return it to you." Then next day, the girl met Franz Kafka. And he said, "Now I couldn't find your doll because your doll is now in a traveling spree. She has gone out on ventures and for having some adventures, and she is now traveling around the world." Now the girl was a bit surprised. She said that, "How come my doll went out on a traveling spree without me? I always carry my doll wherever I go. Why did she go out traveling without me?" So Franz Kafka told that she wants to explore the world. So you must not worry. Once she has completed her explorations, once she has met new people, seen new places, etc., she will return back to you. Girl was happy that, okay, fine, at least my doll is safe. She's just out on traveling spree. Then every day or frequently, Franz Kafka would write certain letters to that girl, which were addressed in the name of the doll. And he was telling the experiences of doll to the girl, that I'm around certain place, I'm eating such and such things, etc. And this is the place now I'm exploring. So doll was writing the letters to that little girl. And in her imagination, it was happening so. So she thought really that the doll is writing her the letters. And eventually, after a certain period, Franz Kafka returned another doll to the girl, which was obviously not the doll which the girl had lost. Then the girl was surprised. He said, "No, this is not the same doll that I had lost." Then Franz Kafka told her, "She is the doll that you had lost. She has changed because of her traveling experiences. But she is the same doll whom you had lost a certain time back." Then the girl thought, okay, fine. The experiences have changed her. So he found a solution to the problem that the girl was facing. That is one context of how we can find the solutions even in our day-to-day life. That is what the radicalists were pointing out towards. There were multiple problems that they were witnessing. Let's try to understand what were the problems and how they were trying to resolve it. So the evolution was behavioral revolution in geography. And we see a backlash in form of social relevance movement or radicalism. And here we see the contributions by some prominent thinkers like Zelensky. Zelensky says we must identify the role of geography in Great Transition. So role of geography in Great Transition, 70s. Cox, who was more from the liberal stream. Conflict, Power and Politics in City. And David Smith, also from the liberal stream, who was giving a work, very prominent work, that is Human Geography, a Welfare Approach. So there were two streams of thought now which emerges, the liberal and the Marxist stream. So liberals who wanted minor adjustments in society for the benefits of have-nots. Now there are two strata of population. One are the have-nots, emerges, the liberal and the Marxist stream. So liberals who wanted minor adjustments in society for the benefits of have-nots. Now there are two strata of population. One are the have-nots and one are the haves. So the perspective of the liberals was to reduce this gap between haves and have-nots such that there is more equitable distribution of the resources. Hence, there is only need for tweaking here and there in context of the adjustments that have to be made. We do not need the overhauling of the society. It is more like a status quo approach. Whenever there are fights in your house, somebody says, I'm packing up my bags, I'm leaving this house, I'm done and dusted. Every day you are doing the same kind of things and you want me to cooperate with you. No, that will not happen. I'm leaving this house once and for all. And he just leaves like that and he reappears after 10 years becoming something else. That is a more radical approach. However, the person who is liberal, he says, okay, fine, we are fighting over this small petty issue, let's resolve this. I don't want everybody to just move away, okay? Then I will have no family of my own. Let's just resolve this quarrel, this dispute. This is a liberal approach. Let's maintain the status quo. And the other thought which says that we need to change the entire social order. Okay? So in that context, सब कुछ ही मिटा देंगे. ऐसा अभी गाना famous हो रहा है. There is a song which says सब कुछ ही मिटा देंगे. Something like that. So it is more radical, a Marxist perspective which requires change of the social order. Okay? But however, there were only variations in how these approaches tried to find the solution. Okay? Whereas the aim was same. That is, both were concerned with the inequalities and deprivations in the society. That is, the problems pertaining to the rich-poor division. How they are to be resolved is a difference in the approach. However, both are aiming to the same context. Bachcho. Okay? Hence, we see that in 1960s and 70s, what was the discontent? How they are to be resolved is a difference in the approach. However, both are aiming to the same context. Bachcho. Okay? Hence, we see that in 1960s and 70s, what was the discontent that was emerging? The discontent that was emerging was primarily from certain sections of society across North America. People were saying that economic growth was not shared equally. So after the war period, there was a certain time period of prosperity. And we were also focusing on models of the economic growth. Okay? So economic growth centric models. We were talking about the proposal in context of the Rostov economic growth. So hence, yes, we had seen the spur in economic growth, but that was not equally divided across all sections of society. Already we were seeing, we were witnessing inequalities becoming important across a certain section of society. So across North America, this section of society which could not reap the benefits out of that economic growth, that growth model could not be applied across all parts in an equal manner. Hence, this section of society became disillusioned. Already they were disillusioned by the models that were being proposed, CPT model, etc., which were talking about the location of the settlements, etc., which could not be replicated in the real life scenario. And apart from that, USA's involvement in the Vietnam War, and there was also a situation of environmental degradation. So all of these were the challenges that the society started witnessing during this time period, which led to the evolution of the radical revolution or the radicalism, which forced the reassessment, very important word, of purpose and methodologies of natural as well as social sciences. So hence, geography as a subject which was focused towards spatial analysis must do a reassessment of what geographers should be studying. Should they be studying only about the locations of settlements, or is there a need for reanalyzing the content of geographical studies? Hence, there is a shift in the geographical studies now from the study of the optimum locations based on the least cost approach towards important aspect, that is focus on physical and social environment that surrounds the people. If the people are living in an environment which is very clumsy environment, unhygienic environment, because that is an area belonging to slums, ghettos, squatters, then should we reorient our studies? Why are we talking only about the location of supermarkets? We must be concerned about the physical and social environment that surrounds the population, so that we can bring in certain changes to it which will improve that particular environment. Simple as that. Hence, need for reassessment in the geographical studies. Person will be quoted, page number 173. This unit, that is chapter 7, the call for social relevance in research. Casperson wrote in 1971, okay, page 173, first paragraph. The goals of geography are changing. The new men see the objective of geography, which is the same as that of medicine, that is to postpone death and reduce the suffering. Hence, there was a perceptible change in the themes of the geographical works. Now, what the geography is focusing on should be different. Okay, so the earlier emphasis on location of supermarkets and highways to poverty and race relations. I hope this is clear to you. So this was termed as radical revolution by Smith and social relevance revolution by Prince. Okay, so this is very important context in this discussion. That is the change from location of supermarkets and highways to poverty and race relations. We were also talking about the race relations in context of the division that the society had till now between blacks and whites. Okay, so this was also an important theme along with the theme of study of slums, ghettos, etc. Now please read the last paragraph, very important. In the year 1970, a forceful paper entitled The Role of Geography in the Great Transition by Zelensky identified a most timely agenda for human geographers as the study of the implications of a continuing growth in human numbers in the advanced countries, somewhere in ideas of new Malthus, acceleration in the production and consumption of commodities towards higher stages of Rostov economic growth, and misapplication of old technologies, the rust belt of the feasible responses to the resultant difficulties. Understood? The idea that is coming out of the unsustainable economic growth which has happened in the previous decades. Next page, page 174. First paragraph. Hence, Zelensky identified 3 different roles for geographers in meeting the impending disaster. Now, geographer is not only a geographer as per Zelensky. As per Zelensky, he plays 3 important roles. The first is that of diagnostician. What does diagnostician do? Diagnostician will identify, right? What is your pulse rate? What is your BP, etc. To involve the geographer as a diagnostician, mapping the load of population on resources, which will give us the identification of the problem. Okay, environmental pollution, crowding, stress, etc. Then involve the geographer as a prophet. Geographer should play all the possible roles. Role of a prophet who would project and forecast the likely futures. So what will be the future scenario? How the frequency of cyclones will increase in the tropical areas. Now recently we also heard of a term medicanes. So what are the possibilities of association of medicanes associated with some particular areas? Is it possible that the frequency might also be seen across some other regions? Then when we are talking about cyclones, should we also talk about landslides? How the landslides will be associated with the GLOF, which are projected to increase in the frequency in coming time periods? What are the areas which are highly vulnerable to GLOF, glacial lake outburst floods? And how it will impact the society which is residing in the downstream areas? Okay, so geographer should be a prophet who can project the likely futures, and geographer as an architect providing the blueprints for the preferred futures and thereby providing guidance to the administrators and policy makers. Now the population here in this region, in the city region, is projected to increase from X numbers to Y numbers, anticipating the current rates of migration, how the migration is going to be happening in the next 20-30 years. That means the city region will witness a certain change in settlements, changes in the transportation, modes of communication, etc. Anticipating that, how the planning for that region should be done. That is also one role of an architect, that is geographer as an architect. Okay, so hence comes the idea of social relevance, revolution, radicalism, etc. Now with respect to the contributions, bachon, first of all we have already marked Zelensky. Now let's move to the another discussion, that is with respect to the 2 streams of thought, that is radical and liberal approach. Okay, so here we are talking about certain ideas. Let's move to the page number 176, the ideas which have been given from starting from page 176, where we talk about the liberal and the Marxist approach. So first of all we will talk about the liberal stream, okay, which also focuses on maintaining the status quo. So page 176, first paragraph, the liberal stream of the relevance movement. Okay, now second paragraph, 5th line, let's say, mapping of human welfare became a major theme of the research in the 1970s, where the concept of welfare was divided into 3 sets of variables to facilitate its measurement and mapping. Knox, these included the physical needs, that is the nutrition, shelter, health, etc., the cultural needs, that is education, leisure, security, etc., and the higher needs that could be purchased with surplus income. So Smith and Knox were the major contributors here. Smith also talks about who gets what, where, and how, who can be in different contexts, who can be elderly, who can be neonatal, who can be feminine, okay, with respect to gender, so female aspect, who can be the deprived sections of the society, who can be the underdeveloped regions, etc. Also associated with the world systems theory. So who gets what, where, and how. So who gets what? What do we get? Do we get good food? Do we get better nutrition? What? Good clothing, good residence, etc. What, where, and how? Okay, the locational aspect. Next line, the central premise behind such research was that the task of the geographer as a social scientist to chart out the inequalities in society in a spatial context. So we are trying to find out the inequalities in a spatial context, bacho. Are they equal, A, B, and C, in terms of the human development indices? If not, then we are trying to find out the inequalities in spatial context, which can be again in different interpretations. Okay, in spatial context, with a view to informing the decision makers and thereby facilitating more meaningful policy formulations. Simple as that. Okay. Last fifth line, to be aware of the problems and their complexity may induce some sensitivity in citizenry, which has shown a yet precious little tolerance for the another point of view. Okay, so Knox का work भी आप quote कर सकते हैं, conflict, power and politics in the city. And next page, first paragraph, last line. In an important textbook entitled Human Geography, A Welfare Approach, David Smith attempted to reconstruct the human geography around the theme welfare, when the author reiterated an integrating focus for a more relevant human geography. बच्चों, okay. So it also focused on next paragraph. Okay, let's say third paragraph, welfare geography correspondent wala. Okay, so it focused to the broader aspects of quality of life, social well-being, so that the redistributional issues assumed great importance. Okay, that was natural because of the slow economic growth, and hence we are talking about the redistribution, who gets what, where and how. The primary focus of welfare geography was who gets what, where and how. Okay, now page 179, the radical or the Marxist perspective. Now they were of the view that is we need to overhaul the system. Okay, and in this time period simultaneously we see an important journal, that is Antipode, which sees the contributions of Richard Peat. So this journal excuse me, this journal Antipode, it sees important contributions from Richard Peat in context of the issues like the illiteracy, the poverty, malnutrition, hunger, etc. So these were the themes that were being identified by the journal Antipode and how they can be addressed. Bachon. Okay, now the second perspective that is proposed more prominently by the works of William Bunge, David Harvey, etc. Okay, so page number 179, the radical Marxist stream, second paragraph. The first conspicuous attempt to radicalize human geography was by the works of American geographer William Bunge, the author of Theoretical Geography, okay, who in 1968 also founded the Society for Human Exploration at Detroit. Now this society is important. Why? Because it is saying that till now administrators have been planning for the people. We have been planning for the people following a top-down approach, whereas the need is to plan with them. So a person must visit the slums and ghettos and must get the first-hand information because believe me, how you consider a village, the perception will quietly change once you visit the villages across different parts of country. Go and visit the villages of Himachal Pradesh, visit the villages of Jammu and Kashmir region. Try and go to the village areas. I'm talking particularly about villages. Why? I will tell you a bit detailed in a bit manner. Okay. Go to the villages of Northeast region. Visit the villages of South India, Kerala, Tamil Nadu. And then go and visit the villages of UP and Bihar. Go and visit the villages of Gujarat, Rajasthan. Visit the villages of Madhya Pradesh, etc. You will find a huge amount of disparity in terms of, let's say, the social aspects, the cultural aspects, the economic aspects, etc. And you will be surprised to know what are the general characteristics of the human dwellings across these villages. Let's say when you will go to UP and Bihar, okay, just a critical analysis, no hard feelings, nothing like that. There is a lot of socio-cultural diversity. You will see a different type of socio-cultural diversity. However, you will still witness a large amount of women disparity. There are areas where the women cannot even go to the agricultural fields, which are being owned by their own family. They are constrained within the boundaries of their home. This is a harsh reality also across some other states like Haryana, across parts of Rajasthan, not necessarily across the entire state as such. The socio-cultural dimensions are completely different. The economic activities on which the people they depend are completely different. Now you go and visit the villages of Kerala, Tamil Nadu, etc. Then you will find something completely different. Even their cultural traits, definitely their language, etc. All of that is variable. Now go and visit the villages across Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand. Here the cultural traits are completely different. Once you are in a village, it won't even seem to you are in a village. It would seem that like somewhere, we are somewhere in a district headquarters, something like that. So please understand that there can be variabilities in socio-economic, political, cultural and other aspects when we go to a particular area and then we try to find out the variability in that. It is not at all similar across all the regions. Hence, a geographer must go and visit that region to understand the problems being faced by that population strata. So go and plan with them rather than planning for them. That will help the geographer understand what is the real life situation. Okay. So इसी paragraph में आगे पढ़ेंगे. We will read further in this paragraph. Let's say somewhere in the middle of the paragraph. Such a participatory fieldwork prepares the geographers to take the planning with the people rather than planning for them. Okay. And another last paragraph. Another related development starting around this time was that the articles started appearing in a general Antipode. Now please understand that whenever the articles around a particular theme start appearing in some prominent journals, then that particular work and the theme associated with it becomes very important. Now somebody will also counter it. Somebody will provide an hypothesis in consonance with that. But generally it evolves a certain discussion around that theme. So hence somebody was talking about the deprivations in society. It would ignite the thought process of other people as well, in which the dominant focus was on problems of the poorest and most deprived sections of society. Bacho. Next, however, some other important contributions were being made by the works of David Harvey. That is one important work, that is Social Justice and the City, okay, which focused about the black people who were living in ghettos. So page 180, okay, second paragraph. The actual breakthrough for Marxist thinking in geography had come only in early 1970s. Okay, a new trend representing the change over from the dominantly liberal to the Marxist perspective was David Harvey, who in a paper addressed to the problem of the ghetto formation had found the existing theories in geography to be quite inadequate for understanding the ghetto formation in American cities. Hence, he was convinced that the problem could be effectively attacked at the source. That is by eliminating the market mechanism and the primary regulator of land use. Now please understand that there is a term which is called as structuralism. Structuralists are somebody who try to find out the root cause of the problem, why that problem has emerged in the first place. So let's say one particular school of thought says that the problems in society are because of the capitalist structure that has been prevailing over certain time periods that leads to division between haves and have-nots. That is the root cause of problem. Capitalism is the root cause of problem. Then what is the solution? We must eliminate the capitalism as such. Okay, the similar school of thought which emerges here post 1970s, they are saying that the root cause of problem, okay, that is with respect to eliminating the market mechanism as the primary regulator of land use. So as per structuralist, find out the root cause of problem and eliminate it. That will help in resolving the problems. Okay, a more radical approach. So hence it leads to the emergence of a term Marxist economics, which is different from the neoclassical economics. And uneven deployment is the spatial imprint, the geographical result of the restlessness of capitalism in a system. Okay, so hence social, economic and political systems, how capitalism advantages some people in some places and creates a division between haves and have-nots. Hence it requires restructuring to bridge this divide between haves and have-nots. Okay, now last concluding paragraph in this aspect is that page 179, first paragraph. Another important theme had also emerged under the study of revived social relevance perspective, that is the concern for environmental problems. These included problems of environmental degradation, conservation and management, and hence it created a study of tourism and other recreational facilities on the basis of how it impacts the local environment, etc. So hence you can end the answer with this, that is radicalism is seen as a major paradigm shift. However, it has also led to the emergence of certain offshoots. Although environmental studies, man-environment relation was an important theme in the geographical studies, okay, even in the earlier time period, but now prominently we were talking about the environmental studies, we were talking about gender geography, etc. So that is all for the discussion of this particular question. Okay, so the next question is another important theme. Now bacho, although the question is around man and his environment, we will take this up as a thematic discussion and we will cover the other questions also which have been asked as per your planner. That is the question around dichotomy, determinism versus possibilism. Another question that has been asked with respect to the discussion around development of environmentalism, etc. So these all concepts are related. We will take up it as a single theme here. Okay. So the question here is the changing relationship between man and his environment has adversely impacted the human development. Explain. 15 marks. Now here one important keyword is the changing relationship. Bacho. Has the relationship between man and his environment static or has it been dynamic? How our understanding of environment has evolved during a period of time has also led to a different interpretation of the relation between man and his environment, which is no more similar to our earlier interpretations. So hence you have to discuss that. The changing relationship, which is not static, but is dynamic. Dynamic is something which is evolving over a period of time, which is not stagnant. For example, when we say India-China relationship is a dynamic relationship, examine. Can we say that it has evolved over a period of time? Yes. India-Nepal relationship is a dynamic relationship. Yes. The geopolitics is a dynamic entity. Examine. So is geopolitics a static concept? No. It is a dynamic concept. A dynamic examination of the relationship that the different countries share with each other. Changing relationship between man and his environment. So how man is related with his external environment. The inner senses, sile, and the external, that is the nature. So hence, examine the changing relationship between man and his environment has adversely impacted the human development. Now, something must have changed in this relationship which has affected the human development, and that too adversely. So it is changing over a period of time. But how has it evolved now in the contemporary times that it is negatively, adversely impacting the human development? Bacho, explain. So human development, as we know, is integral part of the social well-being. But is the man-environment relationship now in such a manner that it is adversely impacting the human development? You have to examine the different stages of the development of man's relation with the environment. Okay, so here in this schematic you can see that what are the different interpretations of the man's relationship with the environment. Environment acts directly on man. So environment acts directly on man, and it influences the activities of man. That is one interpretation. Second is man acts directly on the external environment. Man influences the environment wherever he is residing. So that is second interpretation. Each acts directly on each other. So both of them must live in consonance. They are acting on each other. The reciprocal action is indirect. Why? Because it is conditioned by man's culture and know-how. So over a period of time, man's culture develops and evolves. So hence the reciprocal action is indirect now. It is not direct. Okay. Now let's try to understand. First of all, this context. So the initial ideas that had developed around man-environment theme was that God has created nature, hence man accorded primacy to nature because it was being created by God. So something which is created by God is divine in its own entirety, and hence we cannot disrupt it because God has created nature and then man. We must follow the pursuance of the conservationist approach. So hence we were talking about the divinely creation of nature by God, and hence we must preserve it, we must conserve it. So this idea that is nature is supreme also gives us the idea of conservationist approach. So we treat earth as mother. This is the idea of conservationist approach, also called as IDO. This is the first idea of man-environment relations, which we can track it back to the ancient time periods, even across parts of India, etc. Across many civilizations, this was the idea. That is, God has created nature and we must conserve it, we must preserve it. Were we talking about the resource exploitation? No, we were only talking about the harmonious relationship that the man shares with the nature. Okay, so we were talking about the harmonious relationship between man and nature. Now please understand that whenever an idea it starts, it initiates, it gets propagated, that is because of some underlying factor. Now this idea was prominent across certain parts of the world, for example across India, China, etc. More prominent across the tropical areas. Now in the tropical areas, what do we witness? Across tropics and subtropics, we find that there is availability of natural resources and the climatic conditions are moderate. Hence, man's effort are reduced in such condition. He does not have to thrive very hard because the external conditions, they are not very extreme. The external conditions are moderate. There are fertile stretches of land. There is fertile alluvial soils which can be harnessed for cultivation of different variety of crops. So hence we witness different types of crops, crop combinations. Weather is such that it is moderate, it is not extreme and harsh as witnessed in some of the temperate areas. We witness that there are also some safeguards in form of topographies. So hence we find vast stretches of land which can be irrigated, and hence we can prosper the harmonious relationship with the nature in form of sustainable agriculture. Clear? So hence the people, because they did not have to do much of hard work. Now there was another contrary thought that had evolved that says that because the conditions are moderate, so man has become lazy. And does not perform much of hard work because the external conditions are such that, simple si baat hai, if at your home there are much of luxuries, you have parents to depend upon, okay, you need not go in the hustle and bustle of the city to earn, You're comfortably living in a big mansion. Hence, what are the external conditions? External conditions are such that they are favorable for Netflix and chill. Okay, you need not perform hard work. I don't care about civil services, etc. I am just going to Netflix and chill. You are a bit of lazy. You are just enjoying. Okay, it might be variable from one person to another. Correct? But that is the interpretation that was taken up with respect to the people in the tropical areas. That is, they are a bit of lazy in nature. They're not very hardworking because the external conditions are such that they have become lazy. These are the favorable conditions. Hence, the people residing in these areas need not work very hard. Simple as that. Hence, man has become lazy. That was the interpretation. But that interpretation was later on taken up by another set of the people who belong to a completely different school of thought. Okay. So these ideas were taken up to develop the second interpretation with respect to man-environment relations. Now, what was the second idea? Second idea was, that is, man must exploit the nature for his own survival. Why? Because the external conditions are such that he needs to make a constant effort. He cannot become lazy. The extreme conditions are tough. For example, where? In the temperate locations. Now, in temperate locations, because this is the idea that a man for his own survival must exploit the resources, otherwise he will perish because the climatic conditions are harsh. Limited prospects for agriculture as compared to the tropical areas. Okay, although now we see that in the temperate areas there has been a diversification towards the other activities like fishing, etc. It is more favorable here. Hence, what do we see? Because of the harsh conditions of temperature of the external climate, we see that now the man develops a perspective that I must exploit in order to survive, and hence man becomes supreme, even supreme in order than the nature. And if man is supreme in order, okay, so whoever is supreme in order in hierarchical order, they tend to be exploitative. That is the second objective. Okay, that is the second perspective of understanding the man-environment relations. That may or may not be true in reality, but this is the second school of thought that develops. That is, man needs to be exploitative and must harness the potential of the resources so as for his own survival. So hence, this is the more exploitative perspective, which is also referred to as nature as usufruct. You can say antithetical to the idea of Ido. Clear? So these are some of the initial ideas which are developing around the man-environment relations. This is more prominently associated with the European rim. So this is the initial foundations of the different interpretations of man and environment relationship, bacho. I hope this is clear to you. Okay. So now, as we move forward, these interpretations also take variable forms in the interpretation of who is impacting whom, which results into dichotomies and dualisms later on. Okay. So hence later on we see that this gets modified in form of dichotomies and dualisms. Which is stemming from this interpretation of man-environment relation. I hope that my handwriting doesn't seem to be written in French. Maybe it is your subjective interpretation, but in objective reality, I'm writing only in English. Okay. So when we tend to write very fast, then some of the words, they may seem to be written in French or in some other language, but in objective reality, I'm writing in English only. Okay. So, bacho, you must refer to page number 264, chapter 11. That is geography and environmentalism. Sometimes how we interpret our environment, our surroundings, our subjective reality, it is quite variable with respect to the objective reality, and because of variable subjective interpretations of our realities. There are quite variable differences in how we interpret a situation. For somebody, some of you who are studying for the civil services examination, at this point of time, you just want to run away. One core heart of yours that wants you to engage in these studies, but there is somebody else who is located in your body, okay, who tells you each and every day, just run away from this preparation. Whoever will be here in this preparation, from the objective of clearing the examination and having very high-end goals, who is just working on extremities, may or may not clear the exam. It is more about being in the reality as it is, and you know your potentials. You know very well that I can study only till 10 hours. I cannot go to another extreme. I cannot go and study for 14 hours, but I'm just sitting there, making myself believe that I'm studying. So that is a harsh truth that you're not accepting, okay? Your interpretation of clearing the examination may not match the reality. In reality, maybe, even while you're studying for 6 hours, you may be able to clear the exam, okay? So that is another context, leave it. So geography and environmentalism, man, nature, relationship, first page, okay? So the man, first paragraph, nature, man, relationship, fourth, fifth line, varied from one society to another, okay? So wherever nature of the habitat was friendly and therefore benevolent, or the natural conditions were harsh from the viewpoint of mechanics of living. Hence, the two schools of thought, they emerged gradually, okay, which tells whether the nature, if it is more benevolent, then it should be in the perspective of either. So, last line of this paragraph, the resources of the natural environment were not disturbed beyond the natural capacity of the environment to replenish itself. Maintenance of the ecological balance in nature, bacho. Next paragraph, in last line, European cultural rim. The environment came to be seen as a metaphor for triumph over struggle. The environment came to be seen as a metaphor for triumph over struggle, for dominant forms of social management over the weak, and for the production of capital and resources surplus as an essential prerequisite to the class domination that was necessary to allow societies to progress. This was the dominant view of nature as a suffract. Next paragraph, nature as a suffract has been the dominant view in all the industrial societies world over prominently, which held on to an essential and either perspective and essentially conflictual view of the man-environment relations. Okay. Now let's move to this interpretation, that is with respect to the emergence of dichotomies and dualisms, which are stemming from these variable interpretations, bacho. Okay. So the first is the deterministic interpretation. Now please understand, in the beginning we are talking about the relationship between man and environment, how the causal relationship that is happening between man and environment. But now we are also trying to understand the processes involved in that. Once we start identifying the processes involved in shaping the man-environment relations, then we are also talking about certain dichotomies and dualisms which will emerge. Now the first interpretation with respect to man-environment relationship and how the processes were regulating it was in context of the deterministic school of thought. Okay. So here we are also talking about the processes. Deterministic interpretation, to be more specific, environmental determinism. This school of thought propagates the idea that it is the nature which influences the activities of man. So nature is dominantly having a control on man's activities, bacho. How a man behaves, how a man will perform a particular activity cannot happen at the will of man, because there is an external control of nature. Nature will decide where we can pursue agriculture. Nature, because there are resources, will decide the location of industries. So it is not the possibility of man to locate the agricultural fields across any parts of the world. It has to be associated with the fertile lands, the availability of water, the fertile soils, the availability of the vast amount of the stretches of land, etc. Hence, it is the nature which will influence the activities of man. You cannot produce the infinite amount of food because nature has its limits. We cannot perform the manufacturing across any parts of the world because there are limited resources available. There are regions which are associated with the coal production. There are regions which are associated with the availability of water resources, etc. Hence, we cannot pursue the manufacturing across all parts of the world. Now, there is an upper boundation, an upper limit. Clear? Simple as that. Hence, when nature exerts a control on man's activities, do we see some other earlier references, traces of the works? Yes. For example, the idea of ecumene and non-ecumene. The idea that habitations are dependent upon the external control of environment. So hence the idea of ecumene and non-ecumene. It states that there are certain areas where the settlements can be made because they are more habitable, whereas there are certain other areas where the humans cannot reside simply because they are not habitable. Here the humans cannot reside. Hence, does the external influence guides the behavior of the man? Yes. And hence it can be interpreted as climatic determinism or not? Yes. So how the environment, it regulates the location of settlements, bachcho. Clear as that? Simple si baat hai. Okay. There are other works also where there are traces, but prominently it starts from the work of Ritzel, German school of thought, where we see the seeds of deterministic interpretation of man-environment relations. Now let's try to understand that in the context of the earlier works. So environmental determinism, for example, in works of Hippocrates, we find that there are references that people of Asia were not as hardworking. This may or may not be true in reality. Okay, once we will talk about the other school of thought, that is the possibilistic aspect. We have understood largely that machines can also reduce the humanly work that a man has to do, correct? The mechanical work. So hence, can we say that interpretation that man in Asia are lazy, is that correct or not? We don't know. But yes, we do find the traces of the environmental determinism in the works of Hippocrates. That is, the people in Asia and the regions around there, they are not as hardworking because of the moderate conditions and availability of resources, etc. As per Aristotle, Europeans who lived in cold and difficult climates were more brave, because whenever you are exposed to harsh conditions, then you understand how you have to survive in those external conditions. Whenever the external conditions are favorable, okay, if they do not expose you to harsh conditions, then you do not understand how to struggle and how to strive in harsh external conditions. And hence, because they were exposed to harsher conditions, they were more brave as compared to the people who were lying across the tropicals. Okay. Next, we see some other important references, for example, in works of Kant. Impact of environment on the lifestyle. He also says that inhabitants of the torrid zone are exceptionally lazy and timid for the similar reasons, while the people of Mediterranean region living in the temperate conditions are more industrious, hardworking and progressive, because they have learned how to strive in the harsh external conditions, which the people living across the areas where the conditions are more favorable and moderate, they haven't learned so. Okay, this is clear as that. Now, from this idea, that is environmental determinism, we will also try to derive the second school of thought, that is the possibilistic school of thought. But here I would like to identify the three themes which had become important. Okay, so one was the pre-Darwinian period. The second two themes were during the time periods of when the deterministic school of thought became important and when the possibilism concept that had become more important. So in the pre-Darwinian period, we were talking about the cause-effect relationship. I hope that this term is clear to you. We were not talking about the processes influencing the relationship. But in the Darwinian period, there were traces which were carried on in the deterministic school of thought. There were certain interpretations which were carried forward, okay, which were carried forward and taken by Ratzel and later on by the students. So the processes become important both in deterministic and the possibilistic school of thought. What do we mean by processes here? Let's try to understand that. What do we mean by processes here? Let's try to understand that. Now, as per the deterministic school of thought, the natural processes are more predominant in exerting a control on human behavior. What are those processes? For example, can we say that natural processes are involved in the formation of the cyclones, also responsible for some other disasters, for example landslides, etc., for example floods also, and like that. Okay, are there certain processes which are involved in the formation of landforms? Are there certain processes which are responsible for the activity and phenomena of the earthquakes, volcanism, etc.? So let's say earthquakes, volcanism, let's say landform development, etc. Are these natural processes? Okay, so are the natural processes which are involved in shaping these particular phenomena, do they regulate the activities of man? Yes, it does. All those regions which are earthquake prone, should we have a settlement over there? Definitely not. But yes, we do have settlements across the zone 4 and 5, etc. But still, our objective is that to understand how the natural processes may regulate the human activity. Any region which is exposed to volcanism again will impact the habitation, settlements, the cultural setting, the economic activities of that region. Then landform development is another important process. Then the activities which we perform in such conditions where the natural processes are dominant, can we say that is akin to the deterministic school of thought? Yes. Similarly, cyclones, floods, landslides, etc. Will that regulate the activities of man in form of trade, transportation, communication, other economic activities, etc.? So hence, this is one school of thought which tries to interpret how a man will perform his activities, how he will perform his actions, is in regulation with the natural processes which are dominant in form of the nature's action on man. Now similarly, let's move to the next interpretation, that is in consideration with the possibilistic processes. Now, can we say land degradation? Deforestation, let's say wetland conversion. Are these all the anthropogenic processes which are impacting the nature? Yes. Land degradation and desertification impacting multiple areas, for example parts of sub-Saharan Africa, for example large chunks of the central India and also parts of the western India, western Indian region. Okay. Deforestation largely visible across multiple areas, for example across Brazil. Okay, that has been one major reason associated with the deterioration of the tropical forest. Then wetland conversion. Okay, and also these are the processes which impact the nature, how man is influencing the nature. This is a complete antithetical view, that is how man can regulate the nature. Here we are talking about how nature is regulating the man's activities. Okay, so hence we are talking about the emergence of two different schools of thought, that is one is deterministic interpretation and another is the possibilistic interpretation. Here we are influenced by also the processes. So post the Darwinian period, we also include the processes while studying the man environment relationship, where one major contribution in deterministic school of thought is by Retzel, his anthropogeography, especially volume 1, okay, which is also having traces of the influences of Darwin's work. Okay, now page number 265. Page 265, the deterministic perspective. First para. The geographer's interest in the study of man-environment relationships had got a new lease of life with the publication of Darwin's The Origin of Species, owing on the evolutionary theories underlying emphasis on the perpetual struggle between an organism and his environment, a struggle in which only those species they survive were strong enough to face the vagaries of nature. Survival of the fittest. Okay, now this biologically evolution, concept of the biological evolution, okay, and the notion of struggle and the selection of the fittest, of the survival of the fittest, okay, it offered a scientific justification to the European domination of the lesser mortals in Asia, Africa and Latin America. You must also understand that these interpretations, they were later on taken up. Okay, remember the ideas of Lebensraum. Okay, we have already discussed that. So hence, I think last fifth line, the justification was carried out, same para, through the late 19th century. Geography's disciplinary focus on environmental determinism. Okay, so these ideas were also taken up by Ratzel in his works. We also see the term geopolitic now evolving. So this idea of environmental determinism, that becomes prominent now. That is also taken up across in the works of the other geographers. Now we also see the emergence of the term Lebensraum, okay, the concept of the organic state, etc. And also this idea has been taken up in the context of humans. Okay, in context of humans, that is when we are talking about this approach. So this had influenced the ideas of Retzel in volume 1 Anthropogeography and his students later, that is Semple and Desmoulins. Now Semple belonged to U school of thought. We see a major influence of the works of Ratzel. So she also proposes the similar concepts while studying the American history. Okay, So she also talks about influences of geographic environment, where she talks about the influences of nature on man. So she says that nature regulates the activities of man, and man is the product of the earth's surface. You can quote these lines directly. Man is the product of earth's surface. A staunch believer of determinism, that how nature shapes the human activities and man is the product of earth's surface. Okay? Now this idea, that is the deterministic interpretation, were taken up by Ratzel and his followers Semple and de Moulins. Now antithesis starts developing in different school of thought. Okay, there were other ideas also, like the ideas in the works of Plato, etc. That is, man can act as an agent of change, but prominently being taught by the works of Vidal de la Blache across French school of thought, later on also taken up by Reclus, etc. So as per Vidal, okay, as per Vidal, and in turn modifies the external environment. Because of variable genre de vie, that is their ways of life. And his study was across small regions, which were the villages across France, and his regions were called as pays. Whenever a person is residing in a geographical space, will it tend to modify the external environment? Yes. So this is the idea, that is, man, while living in a particular region, will also modify and leave his imprints on the external environment. The idea of genre de vie. Okay. Now this idea later on was taken up in a different manner. Okay. Here the idea was that a culture may start from a particular place of origin and may diffuse to other areas as well. So leading to cultural diffusion, the idea of cultural landscapes, Carlos Orr, and there was another idea, that of cultural morphology. That is, how the culture shapes the external environment has not been same across the time periods. So this imprint that the person is having on the external environment, that is also variable, and that changes also over a period of time. Okay, so the idea of the cultural morphology, okay, so which also had an aspect of the time. Okay, so we see some of the references of this aspect. Okay, that is, for example, across the ideas of sequential occupants, etc. Now this is the second interpretation of the post-Darwinian period with respect to the processes in context of the man-environment relationship with respect to possibilistic school of thought. Also seen across the works of Bruns, La Géographie de la Historie. Okay, even if you do not know how to pronounce it, you must use them in your answers. Otherwise, what is the perspective? Okay, you must just use the term. Even if you do not remember the term, you can use the idea, etc. Page number 266, please mark some of the aspects so that we can move forward. So page number 266. Gleichen had given the three different interpretations of the modes of nature or the man-environment society. That is, first is harmonious, the second is determined by nature, and the third is modifier of nature. Okay. Then 267, you can refer to the possibilistic perspective discussion, where you will get the works of Vidal, okay, where you will also get the works of the other thinkers. So for example, if you will go to the next page, okay, you can get the works of Lucien Febvre. Okay, 268, first paragraph. There are not necessities but everywhere possibilities, and man as a master of these possibilities is the judge of their use. Okay, but however, there was a medium, or let's say a mediocre aspect, which had emerged during this time, which talked of the middle path. Okay, so page 268, let's say second paragraph, first line. Okay, Spade had suggested the concept of probabilism, and probabilism was closely parallel to the neo-environmentalist view of stop and go determinism. Okay, so 269, first para, last line. The human agency through the use of technology can modify the force of the nature, but it cannot escape it. The role of human agency is similar to a traffic regulator. Okay, so here the context of adverse impact on human development is in context of the nature as a sufferer perspective. Okay, which is not in consonance with the idea of nature as either. So you must justify it, that how we are pursuing the technocentric view and how it has impacted the human development in different connotations. Now you will just take certain examples from across the different regions of the world. You can talk about the Rust Belt, you can talk about the Green Revolution Belt, how the excessive use of the fertilizers, etc., that has degraded the land over there. You can talk about the landslides and floods which had happened recently. You can talk about the increased frequency of cyclones, floods. Again, you can talk about the GLOFs, discuss about the submergence of the islands. All of them are somehow related with the second exploitative view, that is how the human processes have modified the nature, and in turn these are leading to an impact on the human development. Now you have to give the different perspectives of human development. For example, you must talk about the human development which has been negatively impacted in wake of, let's say, an impact of land degradation on the agriculture area. Okay, so does that impact the food production? Yes. Can it lead to famines? Yes. So over a period of time, will it exacerbate the hunger situation? Yes. So talk in human development in that context. What parameters of human development will it impact? You must give certain flow charts giving such descriptions and justify it with the help of some examples. Yeah, multiple case studies with you on this, isn't it so? So just try to integrate that in your answer. Now the next question is similar to this theme. We have already discussed this, so I will not discuss it in detail. I will just tell you what you have to write here. Geographical studies in contemporary times have witnessed a rejuvenation of environmentalism paradigm. Illustrate. Now see, the biggest mistake that you will do here. I've seen so many answers on this particular question. And most of the students, they have done the same mistake, that they start writing a short note on the environmentalism concept. But if the question is not write a short note on environmentalism, then the question would have been different. Your interpretation of the question becomes so variable that you are not able to fulfill the demand. That is the reason somebody scores 200 and somebody scores 260, somebody reaches 300. Even though if I know the term environmentalism, even if I understand the connotation, you must use it in the context of the demand of the question. Here the key term was rejuvenation. Okay, environmentalism is understood. When we are talking about rejuvenation, can be associated with some other context. For example, geomorphology, rejuvenation of a landscape. Are we aware of that term? Yes. So second cycle may lead to the rejuvenation of a landscape and hence resulting into the newer landforms which are lying below the older landforms. Okay, that is one context of rejuvenation. But rejuvenation here in this particular question, it means that we are trying to understand environmentalism in context of rejuvenation. Has the environmentalism perspective been rejuvenated recently? So let's say we start the discussion of environmentalism starting from somewhere around 40s, 50s and 60s, where environmentalism had become a prominent theme of discussion, where environmental degradation was being witnessed. And hence the idea that the resources are limited, we cannot continue the infinite forms of resource exploitation that had emerged during that time period. And hence later on we see the different works. For example, Paul Ehrlich, Population Bomb, for example, Silent Spring, like The Limits to Growth, etc. Now all of these works, they are trying to present a clear picture in the context of the environmental degradation that is happening in the contemporary times. And yes, we need to preserve the environment, we need to preserve the resources for the future generation. This is the initial period from where you will start the answer. You can start a bit earlier from the organic unity principle, okay, but then move towards this. But this is only the discussion that is required in the initial introduction part of the question. Then you will gradually move towards another sequential development. That is, we see that the concerns of the nature as a suffrage perspective that had become dominant when we had started witnessing the ozone layer depletion. Then we see the emergence of the Ramsar wetlands. Okay. Then we also see that there are emergence of the different concepts, for example, CBD, Convention on Biodiversity, etc. Recently, in different concepts, we see the rejuvenation of this concept. For example, talk about the recent COP28. For example, talk about the measures which have been taken up in the last budget in context of the initiatives like MISTI, etc. All of them show cases to us that we are moving towards environmentalism in the contemporary times. When we are talking about the precision agriculture, whenever we are talking about optimizing the use of inputs in agriculture through the use of the satellite farming, etc. Are we trying to propagate a mediocre way with respect to man-environment relations? Yes. You must justify this question with the help of such examples. Rejuvenation was the keyword which you could have understood or maybe misunderstood. So that is why we have discussed this. Next question is an important one. Discuss the significance of locational analysis approach in geographical studies. Okay, locational analysis approach in geographical studies, 15 marks. So let's discuss this important question. So the question is, discuss the significance of locational analysis approach. Locational analysis also used in synonymous form with the spatial analysis or the spatial science. So locational analysis or the spatial analysis or the spatial science another reason why you should have a clarity on these topics is that they have a wide applicability. You will gradually understand. Some of you are only in the first year of preparation. You must clear the examination the first year of preparation itself. Okay? However, when we talk about the thoughts unit particularly, it is very important. Why? Because it has got a wide applicability. Okay? So in any introduction, in any conclusion across different answers, you can just integrate the concepts, especially the name of thinkers. Now locational analysis or spatial analysis, we are very clear. So once the dichotomies were resolved, okay, we also see a hint of locational analysis in the earlier perspectives, in some other earlier works. However, we see prominently the emergence of locational analysis as an approach once this dichotomy was resolved. So this dichotomy, that is regional versus systematic analysis, it was resolved. Hence, it was viewed that we need different geographical models for locational purpose. What do we mean by this? Let's see. If I want to decide what type of agricultural activity do I want to pursue, can I pursue any agricultural activity across any particular region? No. That is determined by a lot of external factors. When I want to set up an industrial unit, can I go and locate that industrial unit across any part of the world, across any region? No. There are certain factors which might guide the location of the industries. So can I propose a theory on this? Where should be the ideal location of the industries? Rather than having any industry across any spatial area, there must be some regions which might be more favorable with respect to the initial conditions which are required for the setup of the industries. Industrial location is associated with certain factors. So if somebody wants to give certain postulates associated with that theory, it should be close to the raw materials, it should be close to the availability of the areas wherever there is availability of labor supply. Somebody says no. For me, the location of industries should be as per the market demand. Even if I'm producing but nobody is purchasing it, then what is the use of having industries? If the market is away from the production center and the end product that I manufacture, that is very heavy as compared to the raw materials, then what is the use of my industrial setup at a far away location from market? Then my transportation cost will increase. And on the contrary, if the raw material that is heavy and the end product that is lighter, then my industry should be located in proximity to the availability of the raw materials. Somebody says, nothing of this matters to me. It is most important for me. That is, whenever I manufacture something, I do not see potential in this country. I have just located my industry here because of the availability of cheap labor. Manufacturing cost is very less in this country. All I want is, I just want to manufacture here and I want to export all the products that I manufacture. The demand base, the consumer base is not in this country. Only because manufacturing had become cheaper. I have located my industry here. The classical case, why? Manufacturing industry shifted their manufacturing base to China and the nearby region, okay? But eventually, because later on with the development of the concept of the supply chain resilience, the industries have shifted to some other places. So hence, can I associate these different concepts of agriculture location, of settlement location? Or somebody says my settlement should be located in proximity to the market. He says that, now I don't want to travel over longer distances to my workplace. So hence, my settlements must be located in proximity to the area of my workplace. What would that mean? All the land prices, all the rental prices, they will shoot up whenever the places are located in proximity to the places of work. Hence, what will happen? More and more people would want to reside there, have a residence here. But the person says, I want to reside in this place which is in proximity to my workplace. So, here रहने से मेरा distance, it reduces to and fro distance. While if my workplace is in Gurgaon and I live, let's say in this region around Karol Bagh, Rajendra Nagar, then my distance of moving from that region, okay, that is from Gurgaon NCR towards Karol Bagh, Rajendra Nagar, there is a lot of distance. Even though there is a metro, still I don't want to travel for that distance. It also increases my transportation cost and wastage of time, etc. Hence, there is another need. Wherever I want to live, that should be in proximity to my workplace, but also it should have a market to cater my demands. Basic necessities should be fulfilled here itself. It should not be that I'm living here, but for my basic things that I want to purchase. So just for purchasing one Maggie, I should not have to travel 20 kilometers because there are no shops catering to my demand here. If I just want a simple footwear, I should not travel to 50 kilometers just for purchasing the footwear, because this has become a completely industrial complex or a residential area devoid of the markets. So all of this should happen parallelly. Wherever the residences are, there should be a market catering to the demand of the consumers. Now the market, okay, that also understands this dynamics. They also want to cater to the demand of the consumers. So this is both beneficial to the producers and the consumers. However, if there are more number of market centers, there is increased competition, and hence it will be a loss for the producer. Hence there should be a specific criteria where this market center should be located, so as to ideally cater to a minimum number of people located in that area, wherever there is a certain range that is associated with that particular market center. So hence there should be a particular radius to which it is catering, and minimum bare number of people to which they are supplying their goods. So that is one aspect of location. However, there can be 1 or 2 or 3 or more number of market centers catering to the demand of a common set of population. There will be competition because there are more than one number of people who are supplying the demand. So hence what happens? There should be an ideal location associated with that, proposed in some manner by Christaller, okay, who also gave the nesting patterns with respect to these settlements, which is hexagonal in nature. Now please understand that this ideal location associated with what sort of activity we are associating it with: agriculture, industry, settlements, etc. There were different ideas which were proposed, let's say starting even from the ideas proposed by von Thunen, okay. So this idea of locational analysis, it focused on the spatial organization. So spatial organization, very important term. The main idea was how the, let's say, industries are located spatially, and the key concepts were embedded into the functional region. Very important. This idea of locational analysis was embedded into the functional region, okay. So the tributary area of a major node, whether a port, a market town, or a city shopping center. So we understand the concept of functional region. So this idea of location in spatial organization, that was integrated in the idea of the functional region. So the area which is not necessarily within the administrative boundary city region, functional region, okay. So it will, let's say, cater to the demand of the trade transportation with respect to, let's say, city A and city B, okay. So hence when we are trying to find the location of that particular, let's say, industry, okay, in that particular space, so hence it will embed into the functional region concept. For example, the tributary of a major node and its periphery, whether a port, a market center, etc. And as taken in the context of the example which we have already discussed, okay. So hence we can organize the movement of the goods, the people, messages, etc. through such nodal centers rather than only concentrating on that particular node, okay. Then we can also structure them hierarchically in forms of the, let's say, hierarchy of the settlements. So what should be the ideal location of the villages, the towns, the cities, the primate city, etc. Okay, producing a system of places. And one classical example is in the context of the CPT, Christaller CPT. All of them are based on the principles of least cost location. That is, my friction of distance should be reduced. Principle of least cost function. I should just put in least amount of effort. Make my life simpler. Place the location of industries close to the area of residence, etc. My residence should be in proximity to the location of industries where I'm working, like that, okay. So these ideas were taken up by the different thinkers in their works. For example, the idea of the agricultural location, von Thunen. For example, we are talking about the industrial location, okay. So industrial location proposed by Edgar Hoover, August Lorsch, Weber, Todd Pellender, etc. okay. And location had been an important aspect in the Christaller CPT, but later on this idea has been taken up by Hagestein, who is talking about the diffusion concept. Now please understand that now the idea of location is a bit modified one. So for example, there were 10 market centers which were catering to the demand of a particular location. But however, now we know about the concept of time-space compression. So the locational analysis in the perspective as it was understood is now modified concept. Now because of time-space compression, what happens? We can order things on Amazon. We can order the things on Swiggy, Zomato, etc. So our idea of location is now a disrupted one. Now there will be further modifications because of introduction of IoT, AI, etc. So hence what will happen? And now because of modification of the demand, how there is socio-economic development as the social capillarity, that also modifies the demand and in turn will impact the agricultural production. The consumer's demand for the industrial output, that also gets variable now. There was a certain time period when majority of the people in India could not even afford a television set. So during those time periods, in 80s and early 90s, in entire colony there was only one television set, and everybody used to visit their homes whenever they wanted to watch a movie, which would frequently come on Doordarshan, etc. Now with the changes in the social capillarity, our demands also changes. That also influences the location. Industries, as the industries which we had known, that have also changed post-Fordism. And with the advent of the globalization, where now we are talking about localization. Please relate all these terms which we have already discussed. So hence, the locational analysis as we had understood earlier is now a modified concept. That is not in the context of how it had actually started, bachcho. So whether in context of agriculture, settlements, etc. This is a modified version of locational analysis which we understand. In this manner, you can write this particular question. Okay. Chalo, this is all for today's discussion. We will meet up again in the next session with the next set of topics discussion. Please keep on writing and practicing answers on all these themes because this is a very important unit. Chalo, take care. Bye bye. Thank you.